Shalom vänner, profetisk uppdatering 15 juli 2024. Vi är väldigt glada för gårdagen när vi fick döpa 6 unga människor till Jesus Kristus med det bibliska dopet eller troendedopet som vi brukar säga. Det bibliska dopet, det gör vi på Jesu egen uppmaning efter att man har kommit till tro på honom, tro på Jesus som sin frälsare och på sin egen bekännelse att jag vill följa Jesus, leva för honom, tillhöra honom. Och det gör vi genom nedsänkning i vatten. Och det läser vi om i Nya testamentet, för det har en andlig innebörd att man begraver det gamla livet med Jesus och man uppstår med honom till det nya livet tillsammans med Jesus och i hans efterföljelse. Det är alltså en troshandling och det är en lydnadshandling. Ett eget personligt beslut som man tar. Så det vill vi uppmuntra alla som är på nyttfödda troende, vill följa Jesus och leva för honom. Om du inte är döpt med detta bibliska dopet så vill vi uppmuntra dig att ta det steget. Ja, då går jag in på annat här. Har människan eller mänskligheten blivit godare, smartare? Ja, vi vill gärna tro det, men svaret är nej. Och därför är Bibeln alltid lika aktuell i alla tider. För den ger kännedom om grundproblemet som är synd, likaväl som den enda lösningen, Guds frälsning och förlåtelse i Jesus Kristus eller Messias. Och Bibeln beskriver verkligheten precis som den är, men den ger också hopp och ljus till var och en som vill ta emot Guds nåd. Gud vet att människan tycker att evangeliet är en dårskap. Många ser det som förenklat eller gammaldags eller någonting annat. För mindre intellektuella kanske. Det är först när vi verkligen ärligt söker sanningen och gensvarar då Gud söker oss som vi både får inse och uppleva, eller kan få inse och uppleva att Bibeln är sann om vi omvänder oss till Herren och ber till honom. Guds ande är det som överbevisar oss om synd, rättfärdighet och dom, säger Bibeln. Och jag läser här från första Korinthierbrevet 1 och vers 18. Ty detta budskap om korset är en dårskap för dem som blir förtappade. Men för oss som blir frälsta är det en Guds kraft. Det står ju skrivet, jag ska göra det visas visdom om intet och det förståndigas förstånd ska jag slå ner. Var är det visa? Var är det skriftlärda? Var är den här världens ordvrängare? Har inte Gud gjort den här världens visdom till dårskap? Att bli förtappad, som det står här, det är detsamma som att gå förlorad i evigheten. Och eftersom Jesus är enda vägen till Fadern, den enda som kan förlåta synd och ge evigt liv, så missar man målet om man förnekar honom eller förkastar honom och förkastar hans frälsning. Alla filosofier, ismer och religioner är tomma och meningslösa eftersom det inte leder till målet. Och det finns mycket mer att säga om detta naturligtvis. Jag går inte djupare in på det just nu, men vi ska läsa från Jesaja 55, vers 8 och 9, där Gud talar genom profeten Jesaja. Mina tankar är inte era tankar och era vägar är inte mina vägar, säger Herren. Nej, så mycket som himlen är högre än jorden, så mycket är mina vägar högre än era vägar och mina tankar högre än era tankar. Och Gud, som vi läste här, som Paulus skriver där i första Korinthierbrevet, valde den här vägen för att ingen ska kunna berömma sig. Det är inte våra gärningar som kan frälsa oss. Det är bara Guds nåd i Jesus Kristus. Han som har uppfyllt och uppfyller och kommer uppfylla alla profetier i Bibeln som handlar om Messias. Det mesta är uppfyllt, men det är också en del kvar ju, eftersom han ska komma tillbaka. Jesus i makt och härlighet, och det ser vi fram emot. Och det är fantastiskt att se, vara med och se människor som har valt Jesus och som vill också gå dopets väg, som vi säger, tillhöra Jesus och leva för honom. Då är man på väg till den slutliga frälsningen, och man är på väg till det himmelska målet. Och det är det som Gud kallar alla människor och öppnat väg för alla människor att kunna säga ja till. Och det vill vi uppmana till naturligtvis. Men med tanke på detta att människan inte har blivit godare eller smartare, så ska jag läsa en artikel från Det goda samhället. Om ni vill läsa hela artikeln kan ni söka på Dårskapens vägar, som är rubriken. Dårskapens vägar, skriven av professor i dynamisk meteorologi, Lennart Bengtsson. Och det var med tanke på hans artikel som jag läste på nätet som jag tog upp just detta som jag sa om människan. Det goda samhällets redaktion återpublicerar nedan en artikel av vår skribent Lennart Bengtsson om det mänskliga gruppbeteendet. Artikeln publicerades första gången för nästan exakt 4 år sedan, den 9 juli 2020. Så står det i artikeln över artikeln. En av de mer läsvärda publikationerna om det mänskliga gruppbeteendet är Charles Mackays bok Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of the Crowds. Extraordinär populär villfarelse och folkmängdens dårskap, ungefär kan man väl översätta det, från 1841. Den påminner oss om att den moderna människan inte har ändrats det ringaste. När grupppassionen griper an stängs förstånd och omdöme av. Mackay sammanfattar med orden att människor blir galna i grupp och återfår förståndet långsamt, en efter en. I slutstadiet fördjupas galenskapen raskt och blir gradvis allt mer extrem samtidigt som den fraktioneras. Man kan se detta tydligt hos religiösa eller politiska grupper som medeltidens flagellanter eller extremisterna under franska och ryska revolutionen eller i de maoistiska revolutionsaktiviteterna under 1900-talets senare hälft. Exempel från Sverige är vänsterrörelsen under 1970-talet där minigrupper började kritisera och bekämpa varandra i strävan efter en allt högre grad av ideell renhet och perfektionism. Inom de stora religionerna som kristendom, islam och judendom utvecklas extremfraktioner från tid till annan. Exemplen är legio, där inte minst islam under senare tid har utmärkt sig. Ett svenskt extremsällskap som uppmärksammas är Philadelphia-sekten i Knutby. Miljö- och klimatrörelsen har under de senaste åren uppvisat liknande sektbeteende där politiker och företrädare för diverse aktivistgrupper uttalar sig om det mänskliga samhällets förestående undergång. Även forskare har engagerat sig i en sådan aktivism där klimatforskare unisont i ett upprop i Dagens Nyheter ställt sig bakom klimataktivisten Greta Thunberg. En intressant utveckling under den senaste tiden har varit kända klimataktivister som officiellt tagit avstånd från sin tidigare uppfattning. Den ledande Greenpeace-aktivisten och en av organisationens grundare, Patrick Moore, har sedan en tid tillbaka ställt sig emot Greenpeace och menar att organisationen förvandlats från en miljöorganisation till en vänsterinriktad politisk aktivistorganisation. Att han på detta sätt blivit en persona non grata inom Greenpeace är en eufemism. Slutcitat. Ja, det var några tankar som var ganska intressanta hur det är. Och mina tankar går till både gruppbeteendet och masspåverkan när det gällde covid-vaccin som vi förkastar och tog och tar avstånd ifrån. Och vi gjorde helt rätt, alla vi som tog avstånd och aldrig tog något vaccin, och vi uppmanar alla att ta inga covid-vaccin och ta inga mer sprutor om du har tagit. Det är vårt råd. Men mina tankar gick framförallt till den utbredda antisemitismen som sveper över världen idag. Den om något visar att mänskligheten inte är förändrad ett enda dugg. Det är precis som Bibeln säger, och som jag sa, därför är Bibeln alltid lika aktuell i alla tider. Antisemitismen är ytterligare ett tydligt och sorgligt exempel på hur påverkbara, till och med lätt påverkade vi människor är och alltid har varit. Det judiska folket har tvingats att inse, som de själva säger, att de är inte hatade för var de bor. Att det enbart skulle handla om landet Israel, om det geografiska området. De är hatade för var de är, judar. Och därför vet vi som läser Bibeln att det också framförallt är en andlig kamp bakom allt detta. Demonisk ondska. För ytterst är det djävulen som påverkar människor att hata Guds utvalda folk och Guds plan med det judiska folket och Israel. Och landet Israel tillhör judarna, och därför ingår hatet emot Israel och alla försök att fördriva judarna bort därifrån ingår i antisemitismen och judehatet. Men vänta nu, kanske någon tänker, israeliterna blev ju bortdrivna på grund av sin egen synd både på Gamla testamentets tid och år 70 och därefter på Nya testamentets tid. Det är sant. Och Gud varnade genom sina profeter, Guds profeter varnar för detta länge innan det hände. Gud sände sina sändebud till folket och varnade. Men i den sista tiden ska allt dras till sin spets. Och tidstecknen visar att vi lever i den tiden. Och då ska inte judarna skingras, utan de ska samlas tillbaka till sitt land, Israel. För Jesus ska komma tillbaka dit när en majoritet av folket bekänner sina synder och tar emot honom som sin Messias. Jag går tillbaka till nyheter. Vi kunde läsa här förra veckan citat då, den tidigare israeliska försvarsministern uppmanar judar att fly från Frankrike efter uppkomsten av extremvänster. Det finns ingen tid, sa han. Den tidigare israeliska försvarsministern Avigdor Lieberman uppmanar den franska judendomen att fly från Frankrike och varnar för att det inte finns tid efter extremvänsterns triumf i landets parlamentsval. Som Breitbart News rapporterade levererade Frankrikes president Emmanuel Macrons allians med New Popular Front en seger över Marine Le Pens populistiska höger, vilket har väckt oro för antisemitism med många franska judar som känner sig allt mer osäkra på sin plats i Frankrike. I likhet med USA och andra västländer har Frankrike upplevt en ökning av antisemitism sedan Hamas-attacken i Israel den 7 oktober 2023. Den franska regeringen rapporterade mer än 360 attacker mot judar i början av 2024. En ökning med 300% från föregående år. Slutcitat där. Och jag går över till Amir Tsafatis senaste nyhetsbrev där jag vill läsa en del ur det. Efter det farliga och nedslående franska valet under den senaste veckan där det konservativa partiet förlorade och den betydande expansionen av muslimskt inflytande ökade, har tusentals franska judiska familjer öppnat Alia-filer. Dessutom har begäranden från franska judar om att flytta till Israel skjutit i höjden med 430% sedan oktober 2023, mitt i skyhög antisemitism och osäkerhet efter valet. Antisemiter gör livet omöjligt för judar runt om i världen. Det är just därför vi behöver en judisk stat. Men på en bredare nivå är det som sker i Frankrike med framväxten av den progressiva rörelsen och islamiskt inflytande inte en isolerad fråga. Och precis som att styra kom den globalistiska eliten efter kandidaten folket ville ha i Israel och USA. Samma sak händer nu i Frankrike. Jag gör ett litet uppehåll där. För här tar Amir upp en väldigt viktig fråga som gäller oss, var och en personligen, om hur vi ställer oss till Israel. Och jag har tagit upp det här förut och det är bra att bli påmind om. Genom hela Bibeln kan vi läsa om hur Gud handlar och har handlat med Israel. Som jag var inne på tidigare här, det är det jag vill fortsätta på. Också beroende av hur folket handlar mot Gud och hans bud. För Israels folk, det judiska folket, ingick förbund med Gud. De kallas förbundsfolket. Och därför så har det en speciell betydelse hur de agerar. Och Gud straffade ofta synden med världsriken som domsredskap. Assyrien, som vi vet, intog Nordriket Israel och Babylonien intog Sydriket Juda på grund av synden och dess konsekvenser. När man införde främmande religioner, och den frukten är inte god. När laglösheten ökar och påverkar blir vi människor allt mer kärlekslösa och hårda. Och Jesus talar just om hur det går när kärleken kallnar och att det kommer att vara många som kommer att kallna i den här yttersta tiden eller de yttersta dagarna. Själviskhet och girighet kan ta sig uttryck i både grymhet och ondska. Och när Gud dömer är det en konsekvens av ett sådant samhälle. För kylan drabbar, eller det onda drabbar alltid mest de svagaste. Och Guds tjänare blir förföljda. Guds folk blir förföljda. Och mönstret, det läser vi om i Gamla testamentet och vi ser att det är samma idag. Men när Gud hade dömt sitt folk så dömde Gud de här domsredskapen som han tillåtit agera. Och det gällde både Assyrien och Babylonien och övriga. De gick över gränser, de tog äran från Gud och de fick sitt slut. Och samma gäller alla världsriken, också det sista globala kontrollsamhället som beskrivs i Uppenbarelseboken 13 och som vi ser idag formas fram och pågår globalt. Men den här gången kommer Jesus själv att omintetgöra detta världsrike och världsherravälde vid sin återkomst. Tillbaka till Olivberget och Jerusalem i Israel. Och då ska judarna vara där och de samlas dit och det pågår. Så nu fortsätter jag med Amirs nyhetsbrev här. Vem du identifierar och står med är mycket viktigare än vem mobben står för. Gud har dömt Israel för dess synder, men Gud är och kommer alltid att döma Israels fiender för deras hat mot sitt folk. Låt aldrig Israels folks andliga tillstånd tjäna som en ursäkt för att hata dem och komma emot dem. Sakaria 2:8. Ty så säger Herren Sebaot, han som för sin härlighet skulle ha sänt mig till hedna folken som har plundrat er. Den som rör vid er, rör vid hans ögonsten. Herren tillät den babyloniska erövringen och sitt folks fångenskap. Men gissa vad? Han dömde sedan babylonierna för vad de gjorde. Jeremia 51, vers 24. Men nu ska jag inför era ögon vedergälla Babel och alla Kaldeens invånare för allt det onda som de har gjort mot Sion, säger Herren. Och Kaldeen och Babel var ju samma sak, men Kaldeen brukar mer syfta på den andliga ockulta andligheten. Det var ju mängd med spåmän och ockulta ledare där i Babel och det som kallas då Kaldeen. Och Amir skriver: kristna är eller borde åtminstone vara långt över alla känslomässiga eller intellektuellt baserade argument angående konflikten i Mellanöstern. Det är viktigt att du har en biblisk tro, bemyndigad av den helige Ande som finns i dig. Utan honom kommer du aldrig att kunna urskilja rätt och bevara dig att stå fast. Att stå med Israels rätt att existera, rätt att äga sitt land och rätt att försvara sig är bibliskt. Det var sant före den 7 oktober och är definitivt så efter det. Stå fast i dessa sista dagar. Slut citat där. Jag har valt 2 videor idag som är ungefär 20 minuter var. Den första videon är från Jews for Jesus, judar för Jesus, och den handlar om en judisk rättsmedicinsk tandläkare med 40 års erfarenhet i sitt yrke i USA. Och under videon står det så här, översatt till svenska då: i detta fängslande vittnesbörd om tro delar Jeff med sig av sin resa som jude till tro på Jesus och hur han genom sitt intellekt och vetenskapliga bakgrund fann Nya testamentets påståenden om Jesu födelse, liv, död och uppståndelse vara sanna. Ja, det här är lite ovanligt vittnesbörd och jag tyckte det var fantastiskt intressant. Han såg alltså att evangelierna var skrivna av ögonvittnen och de är exakt så som ögonvittnen berättar. Det var och en såg och det man minns. Därför brukar de inte vara exakt lika. Men ändå beskriver då från olika vinklar så att säga. Och dessutom vet han, som har varit med i väldigt många rättsfall och mordutredningar, att det är väldigt svårt att göra sig av med en kropp. Alltså en död kropp, ett lik. Och han säger att på Nya testamentets tid hade de med all säkerhet ha funnit Jesu kropp om han inte hade uppstått. Men ingen kropp gick att finna. Och många vittnen såg ju Jesus som uppstånden. Och allt detta överbevisade Jeff om att det är sant utifrån sin profession. Och det här ledde ju då i sin tur till att han kom till tro på Jesus och blev en pånyttfödd och frälst jude. Eller kristen kallar han sig nog. Han bor i USA, men han är ju, eller messiansk, det är ju samma sak. Den andra videon heter Idag kommer du att vara hemma. Och det är israelisk gisslan minns räddningen från Hamas. Det var ju 4 i gisslan den senaste räddningen. Jag kommer inte ihåg exakt när det var, men det är ett bra tag sedan nu. Som IDF räddade 4 gisslan. Och det här är en av de killarna som intervjuas här. Det är en intervju på CNN med han heter Andrei Koslov, som hölls som gisslan i 8 månader av Hamas efter att ha blivit kidnappad den 7 oktober. Koslov berättar om övergreppen han utsattes för och dagen då han räddades av IDF. Ja, det här är en stark och gripande video, vill jag säga. Men det är också en påminnelse för oss alla att inte glömma bort den israeliska gisslan i Gaza. Att vi fortsätter be för dem, att vi ber om deras befrielse, att de får komma hem till Israel. Att inte fler ska behöva dö i Gaza. Man tror ju att Man är ju säker på att inte alla lever, men vi ska i vilket fall fortsätta be för dem, och vi ber ju även att de ska söka Gud där i sin situation. Vända sig till Herren. Bli påminda om Israels Gud, Bibelns Gud, och söka honom. Med detta önskar jag er en fortsatt fin dag, Guds välsignelse och shalom.
Religion's very good, but I didn't really need it, right? Because I was doing very well.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't need Jesus. Why would I want Jesus as a Jew? Would I want a third eye? You know, I still need this, right?
So Jeff, you became a dentist and then a forensic dentist. Tell me how hard it is to hide a body.
It's very difficult. I've done several cases where bodies were attempted to be eliminated where nobody would be able to identify. These were done by professional murderers who said, they'll never identify your husband, don't worry, he's gone. And we identify him because it's very, very difficult. You could bury him, you could cut him up in pieces, you could drop him in the East River or the Hudson River. As you know, Manhattan is an island, and that's where I served most of my time as the chief forensic dentist here. And so people are dropping bodies in the rivers around here.
You have a story about that?
Yeah, a woman was murdered, and found out afterwards it was murdered by her husband, who was a private pilot. And he murdered his wife, put her in a 50-gallon drum, took his plane out to the ocean as far as it could go, and still safely returned. Dropped the barrel with his wife's body in there in the ocean, figuring that he was weighted, so he's never going to see her. Nobody's going to ever find her. She's going to sink to the bottom, and that's going to be the end of it. Fortunately for us, it doesn't work that way. Body decomposes because of the bacteria, and you get gases. Gases are produced with such pressure that it can lift all that weight that he put in there. It was not enough to prevent it from rising. And as it rose, it hit thermal planes or streams in the ocean, which then brought it up into the area of Manhattan. The police see it, they bring it in, brought it over to the medical examiner's office, and I made the identification.
Okay, so she's at the bottom of the ocean, rises not from the dead, but she rises up. Now, as a Jewish man, growing up in New York, how do you come to put your faith in Jesus, who lived, taught, died, rose from the dead? And how do you put your mind around that as a forensic dentist?
I have to go back and give you a little history. I was born and raised in the Bronx. We lived here in the village for several years, but then we moved up to the Bronx, but we still had a store on Waverly Place. We're looking at Waverly Place there.
Yeah, and your family is Jewish?
Yes, my family's raised
from where?
Jewish. From Odessa, Kiev.
Ukraine.
Right, Ukraine, basically. Okay. Both sides, 100% Jew. And
even the DNA says so.
Yeah, that's right.
If we're talking forensics.
Yes, I did my DNA, and my DNA says you're 100%.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of that, because most of my friends who've done DNA, they say, well, they're 70% this, the 20% that.
Right.
They get all and I'm 100%. So as I would say to them, if we were dogs, I get my papers. I go into the kennel club. You can't. You're a mutt. I'm a purebred.
Purebred.
Just saying.
Yeah. Just saying.
Just saying. Okay, so born in the Bronx.
Yeah.
And I knew we didn't speak of Christians in those days. We spoke of Catholics.
Right.
There were Jews and Catholics.
Yep.
I played ball on teams, and my teammates were either Jewish, Irish, or Italian. Those are the people there.
Yeah.
I thought if you were not Jewish, you were Catholic. I didn't know anything about Protestants.
Was your family religious?
We weren't religious. Well, we observed the holidays, the major holidays, certainly Passover,
same with us.
Yom Kippur, etc. But we didn't keep a kosher home. My grandparents kept a kosher home, but not my parents, and certainly not me. But we knew we were only one thing: we were Jewish. That's it, you know. And there was no reason to want to associate with the religion of my friends. I mean, I would eat in their home, I played ball with them, but they went to church and I went to a temple. I mean, synagogue. Yeah, that's what we did.
Okay.
Fast forward to becoming an adult. I went through school here. I went through City College, NYU Dental School, trained at Bellevue and NYU as an oral surgeon. And at the same time as I went to oral surgery training, I associated with the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. That's where I learned to be a forensic dentist.
Yeah.
And I did that for over 30 years.
Well, this is really important. because a lot of people will say that Jews find Jesus because they're uneducated and they just have this spiritual longing. They hit the bottom, and some nice Christian came up to them and shared with them the gospel. But it wasn't like that for you. You're a very intellectual man, a very successful man, and yet you wanted to find Jesus and the truth about the gospel intellectually.
Yes, exactly. It was just the opposite.
Right.
I didn't need anything. I was very well. I was doing very well in my practice.
Yeah.
I was practicing, I was in Madison Avenue and 57th Street.
Life was good.
Pretty nice, prestigious area.
Yeah.
A big co-op on the Upper West Side. I mean, religion's very good, but I didn't really need it, right? Because I was doing very well.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't need Jesus. Why would I want Jesus? I mean, not as a Jew. Would I want a third eye?
Totally.
Don't need this.
Right.
Okay, but at that time, I met from my office a wonderful, beautiful little young woman come in who became my wife. That's how we met.
Yeah.
My dental chair. And I proposed to her and she accepted. And she said, I'd like a religious service. Now, this is pretty strange because she was brought up as a Catholic till around 11. And then there was this dispute with some priest and they said, well, you don't have to go back to church. So
okay.
She stopped going.
So they left
to
the Catholic Church at that point.
Yeah. Right. So she wants a religious service. So who's going to do this? I mean, I was basically an agnostic Jew.
Right.
I had not gone to temple since I was bar mitzvah or to somebody else's bar mitzvah. That was the last time I was really in a temple or a synagogue. Who was going to marry us? So we lived in the Upper West Side. We went to every church that was in the Upper West Side. And of course, they look at us as if we had two heads and say, well, wait, you're not Lutheran and you're not Lutheran. What are you doing here? Oh, we want to get married by a priest. Well, that's nice.
Yeah, go to Vegas.
Yeah, but you can't do it. Yeah, go to some other place. We're not going to do it. Until a childhood friend of Susan, who was a wonderful guy, who also lived in the Upper West Side. This is like the late 70s, early 80s. And he said, I go to a church that has a woman who's the senior rector, an Episcopal church. Yeah. There's a woman. And I didn't know women were allowed to be. So she was one of the first ones ordained in the United States as a priest, as a rector. And he said, and the associate rector is a man called Steve Pogoloff. And I said, Steve Pogoloff, that doesn't sound like an Episcopalian sounding name. Yeah. It sounds like one of my tribe, huh? Yeah. And he certainly was. He was a Jewish believer who went to seminary and became a priest. So my wife, she was really glad to see a woman as the rector, and I was glad to see the associate rector as a Jew because he can understand me. He understands. If I talk to him about food, he's not going to say bagel. What?
Right?
He'll know. Okay. So we started going, and they married us. And after we got married, my wife wanted to get baptized in the Episcopal Church, so she was baptized. Okay. And I would sit under this senior rector, Carol Anderson, who was a wonderful proponent of the gospel. She really didn't mince words. She told us there's sin, you are sinners, and the answer to that is Jesus, and that's the way it is.
Well, how'd you feel about that, being a Jewish guy hearing that you're a sinner?
Well, I knew this guy was bad, and the guy over there was bad, but not me. I mean, right. You're not talking to me.
Well, I didn't dump the body in the ocean.
That's right. Yeah. I'm a good guy. I'm a good guy. So Carol seemed to have contacts all over the place. One time we had Desmond Tutu, from South Africa come. We had celebrity. I don't know how she did it, but she had real connections, and was wonderful for us because I got exposed to all these wonderful theologians and people. Yeah. But again, I'm not looking for Jesus. I'm there as an intellectual Jew to listen. Yeah, tell me about your ideas. I think that's good. She brought this guy in named Bob Mendelson. At that time, he was here in New York. He was at the Manhattan Station for Jews for Jesus, and he was giving a series at our church in the evening on the Jewish perspectives of Christianity. And Susan said, "Why don't you go?" I said, "Sure." And I took my best friend, who was also Jewish. Stan was there, and we had another person who was Jewish. So I wanted to come on because I'm going into the den of Gentiles. So
right.
I want to. I don't know about this.
Yeah, being led in by Jews.
Yeah. So and Mendelson. So I want to make sure we got guys backing me up and say, "No, we don't do that." You can say, "Yeah, tell them, Stan, we don't do that. What is he talking about?" Right. And so Bob gave the gospel, and when they had the question answer period, I raised my hand and I said, "Wait a second, Bob. You mean to tell me that if I don't believe in Jesus, because I feel I'm a pretty good guy. I don't even cheat on my income tax, and I can say that with a straight face. And really, people say you're a really nice guy. I'm not going to go to heaven unless through Jesus. Is that what you're telling me? He says, I anticipated him saying, well, everybody else, but you, Jeff, you don't have to, because you're Jeff, and don't worry, you're going to probably get a pass. Right. But everybody else, no, he didn't say that. He said, yeah, right, you're not going to heaven. When I was shocked, he was my own landsman telling me, no, you're supposed to say, oh, yes, you can do it. No. Right. I said, so now I'm getting a little upset, and I want to find out, why does this guy believe this? And he gave us his testimony. It's very interesting. And I started reading the Gospels, and at the same time going to the church with my wife. Again, I was hearing the word, and as it says in the Bible, as you know, and some people know, don't know, that faith comes through hearing the word, through listening. And that's what I was doing. And not that I intentionally wanted to seek him or have Jesus as my Messiah. I was just hearing this stuff. And everything seems to start having a ring of truthfulness. Okay? It wasn't just the story. Yeah. Before I believed, I said, well, that's a nice story. Somebody wrote it up. I mean, all religions and all peoples have their history of how something happened, how something started. And they're usually good stories. But this was very intriguing. Being a forensic dentist, after reading the Gospels, I said, this is very, very true. This is how eyewitness testimony is given. Yeah. Because I've sat in trials, and I've sat next to eyewitnesses when we would be interviewed by the DA, I as an expert witness, but they as a fact witness or as a eyewitness. And I could see that one person gave who witnessed the same event, almost a completely different story. Right. So how come you didn't mention what he mentioned? And he mentioned something that you mentioned and didn't mention. That's the way eyewitness testimony is. So when people would criticize, and me being myself at that time, the gospel, say, well, how come Mark said this, but Matthew didn't have it? He forgot that. Why didn't he put that in? Of course, that's not the way things go. People tell the story as they see it and as they remember it. And that's why that seemed very, very true. Okay, so that was really pushing me to say, hey, there may be something that's really true here. This is not just a story, this New Testament. I know the Old Testament may be true, but not the New Testament. And that was men. We know it was all men. They were all these apostle people. I don't know what they're talking about. And then Reverend Anderson gave a sermon on the resurrection and the fact that probably around Easter, and that the body is not found. You could find any body. You can't get rid of a body. So in biblical times, it was almost, I would say, impossible to get rid of a body. It's almost impossible, as I said today, to get rid of a body. Yeah. Many, many times we had cases where we had a body that was really chopped up by some gang and then put in little sandwich bags and distributed all over the city that it would never be identified. But he was identified because you can't just destroy it, okay? It's very hard to destroy completely a human body. Okay. So certainly biblical times, if that body was around after Jesus was killed on the cross, that body would have been found. Would have been found by somebody. Well, it might have been found 10 years later, but it would have been found.
Everybody was looking for him.
Everybody's looking for him. There's a lot of reasons people want to do it. Yeah. It wasn't found. And that also rings very true. Yeah. Okay. Because without a body, then you have to believe that the resurrection is true. Yeah. Now you have a real dilemma. Because if I believe that, which I was believing now, then I have to believe everything else he said was true. Because why would he lie about everything but not lie about the resurrection? Okay. Yeah. So once I believed that the resurrection was true, then the whole Testament is true. The whole New Testament, everything he said is true. Wow. Like it or not, that's the story. That's the game. You either want to be saved and be a Christian, or you want to just keep believing your own belief. And the problem is this day, people have their own worldview, as they say. Okay, and sometimes they even say their own facts. Okay, I always thought facts were one fact. That you can't have one fact and I have a different fact about the same thing. Right. But that's the way it is these days, and people don't like to hear facts that violate their beliefs. Right. And that's a big problem. That's a big problem for a lot of people. That's why I feel it's a stumbling block for a lot of people.
It is a huge stumbling block, but intellectually, you arrive at the conclusion that it's logical to believe that Jesus lived, died, and rose from the grave.
Not only logical, you would need more of a leap of faith not to believe the Gospels, not to believe that he was resurrected.
Wow.
Because if you say he wasn't resurrected, that means there was a body. And I would say, why did they find the body? Why didn't they find the body? Well, they couldn't find the body because it wasn't there.
Wow.
Because everybody, the Romans would have liked, the Sanhedrin would have liked, so many people would have liked to say, oh, here's your Savior. You know, we found her,
Right.
okay?
Right.
And, you know, very easily identified. You know, he has the wounds that were consistent. That's what we do also in forensic. You want to see when someone's murdered, you look at the wounds. Is it consistent with the homicide? Was he actually killed by these wounds? Or did he die a natural death and someone shot him to make it look like it was a homicide?
Right.
We had cases like that. So you have to investigate. But
Wow.
my experience as a forensic dentist over 30, 40 years bring me to the one conclusion that everything that's spoken of in the New Testament is true. Is true. There is no made up story as I used to believe.
So you would encourage our Jewish people to open up not only the Old Testament, but the New Testament.
Right.
And search for themselves.
Yeah. Look at it. See if it doesn't ring true when you read it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So how did this change you as a human being?
Well,
because it was first an intellectual understanding.
Right.
And then it became spiritual.
Then it became spiritual, yes. And now I wanted to be part of this. So I became baptized.
Yeah.
It says that when you are baptized or when you become a believer, you're a new creation. That's what it says in the Bible. That's what I believe. And because of that, I did change. I used to curse a lot, not all the time, but
Me too.
cursed a lot more than I do right now. I don't think my daughters, who are 34 years old, ever heard me curse. Okay? Ever.
Yeah.
But before we got married, they would have heard me curse. Before I became a Christian, they would have heard that.
Yeah.
And also, going along with that, I also am very quick to anger. I
Yes.
get very angry very quickly.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to get me angry.
Wow.
You really have to work at it. And I didn't do that intentionally.
Right. These aren't changes that you said, I'm going to convince myself, I'm going to change my own mind and my own habits, and I'm going to create new behaviors because it's a good thing to do. This happened, it came over you.
Yeah, it just changed.
Which is what the Bible talks about, the Spirit of
That's
God
right.
living in the human being, basically cleaning house. And I like to say that the Spirit of God doesn't like to live in a dirty home.
I agree.
Kicks all the junk out.
That's right.
Sometimes it's immediate, sometimes it's over years.
No, this was like immediate.
Yeah, wow.
I didn't realize it till someone says, you don't curse anymore.
Yeah, the most brilliant people in the world
Yeah,
cannot overcome their own habits and animal instincts.
of course not.
You know, it's so difficult to do. And like myself, 20 years I was trying to change my own behavior and change my own thoughts because I thought it was the right thing to do. I want to become a better person. Couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Till one day I just said, all right, give up.
Well,
I give up. And then Jesus shows up, does it for me. I knew it was a miracle. And then I went to go intellectually find him.
right.
And I did.
Right.
The more I study my faith now, the deeper my faith becomes.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah,
Agree.
yeah.
I mean, and people would assume in the beginning when I first became a Christian, that was because of my wife, because she
Right.
was,
Of course.
she became a Christian early on. She got rebaptized and she was very biblically oriented. She would read the Bible. Later in life, she became the assistant teaching director at Community Bible Study, where we live in New Jersey. And she just recently retired after 30 years
Wow.
of service there. She was an example of what a Christian is.
Wow.
But I didn't do it because Susan asked me to.
Yeah.
She didn't say, wouldn't it be nice?
But that flies in the face of being born again. A human being can't say, yeah, I'm going to become a Christian because others are doing it. Every person that becomes a real Christian has to have an encounter with the living God that changes them intellectually, spiritually, changes their heart in some way where they recognize Jesus. It's not, this is something cool to do. I'm a Christian. No, it doesn't work that way. And I think that's an illusion that a lot of people have in the world, that Christians are kind of raised Christian, they're born Christian. It's a group of people that just call themselves a certain label and they believe a certain thing. No, every Christian that's a true Christian has to have an encounter with the living God. Your wife had that, you had that. My wife and I had that on the same day, or we came to faith in Jesus.
Wow.
We came to faith in Jesus on the same night. And I think it's really smart that we can share Jesus with the world on an intellectual level, because a lot of people, they go through life based on their feelings. And I didn't want Jesus to be just a feeling for me. I wanted to love God with my mind. And people like you, very well educated, very successful, their life is together, understand Jesus with their mind, come to faith in him, and then have their spiritual transformation.
That's
Beautiful.
true. Working in the Emmy's office for many years, I saw the personification of evil. What one human being did to another, I knew in my heart and intellectually there was some other force that was directing him to do that. That one person could not do things that I saw to another human being.
Yeah.
Okay? I knew there was this evil force. As a matter of fact, sometimes we would even feel it as I would go down into the mortuary division where all the bodies were, where they were being autopsied or they were being put back into the refrigeration unit. Thinking about it now, there was the feeling of evil that was right there. And if you believe that, which I did believe that there's evil, then you have to believe the corollary that there's good. And that also was another influence, back in my mind. All these things, put together, it's like you get the eureka, like, hey, this is true.
Yeah.
This is not made up stuff.
And in a day and age where everybody thinks that they can make up their own truth because it steers them away from what's really actually true and reality. If you were to be standing in front of a Jewish person and they say, hey, I don't know about your religion, man. I don't know about your faith, but I'm kind of curious. What would you tell that person?
I would say, read the New Testament. Also, you should know your Old Testament.
Yeah.
You should know all the prophecies in the Old Testament of the coming of the Messiah, Mashiach. And that Mashiach is fit only one person in all of history. All the different foretelling of the coming, where he would come, how he would come, what he would do. It's all in the Old Testament. It's in my Bible, right? The Jewish Bible. It's all there. It's only fit by one person in all of history. There is no coincidence. That's beyond mathematical numbers. It would be so high a number, nobody can even talk about the number.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Know your history, that everything that Jesus was fulfilled from the Old Testament, and that everything he said in the New Testament is being fulfilled and has been fulfilled and will be fulfilled.
Amazing.
Because he said it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Jeff, great name.
I like the name too.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much for sharing your testimony. It was encouraging to me, and I hope it was encouraging to you too.
Did you see any other hostages in your 8 months there?
I saw, but I don't want to talk about it.
Is this too painful, or because you're worried about them?
It's painful. It can be dangerous for them. So I don't want to talk about it.
Were they in worse shape than you were?
Yes, they were.
Many?
Not many.
When did you move to Nusrat?
I don't know. But if you mean the last place, it started in the middle of the December. This apartment was really big, maybe 180 and one half. In one of the half we took place, and another half it was for family. No one time we didn't see faces because we were separate with the door.
And you never saw them?
Yeah, we didn't see them, never.
So tell me about that day of the rescue, June 8th.
We were sure in that day, in 8th of the June, that it was regular morning. I was reading some book about Marco Polo.
They gave you books?
Couple, they gave us book only in April. They gave us also some stories about Quran, and you can read, you cannot read, we don't care. So we read it. Of course we read because it's to take our mind with something. And sometimes suddenly in every window that we had started to little explosions and they are already inside, and I was what's going on? What's going on? You're a little bit freezed, you are in shock, you are afraid. Of course. If it is like Israeli army, I thought that they told us that if they come to rescue, we will kill you. Like, don't think that we will give them to rescue. And I understood that that's a hal. I prayed like they had like couple of seconds to kill us. Like, I mean,
They were in the room with you.
not in the same room, but they have like 5 meters, like one shoot. So, but they didn't do this. Like, they were killed maybe in like 5 seconds. Like, they started to ask our names, like Shem. Probably you saw it in video. The Almog, Andrei, slow me. They started like, it's Israeli army. And some guy, he was a Russian speaker, he asked me like Andrei, he told me in Russian, I will translate to you, like, I will go with you, you will go with me, only with me, 2 meters maximum from me. We will rescue. Today, you will be at home. And I was like, at home? Today? Already today? Really? You don't joke? And he, yes, היום בערב הביתה. Okay, היום בערב הביתה, let's go. Let's do it. Let's do it. And after they did what they did, what I can to say that I smoke in tank, like, it was like, smoke in tank.
You smoked a cigarette.
Yeah.
Did you watch the video of your rescue?
A lot of times.
A lot of times?
A lot. Even today.
Why?
It's something great, and it was something special for me, and it's my 3rd birthday. The first one was on 7th of October, the 3rd one in the 8th of the June. And of course I remember this. I made this tattoo. It's scars that I got from 7th of October when I fall from the cliff and some bushes cut my skin.
We all saw the video of when you were reunited with your mother at the hospital. As a mother, it brought tears to my eyes to see how you fell down on your knees, hugging her. Do you know how difficult I would imagine you do those 8 months were for them?
I was so afraid not to see them.
You thought you'd never see them again?
I was afraid. I imagined how that my mother and father and brother will not hear the words I love you anymore. I know that 120 hostages are still there, and fortunately for me, I was lucky. Unfortunately for them, they are still in Gaza, and they don't know when they will come back. It's absolutely disgusting and terrible feelings. I don't imagine how to live in tunnels. We need to bring them home as soon as possible. They can die there after months, and they are waiting. They keep going, and they All of them, they're already strong. But some of them, they don't have time. So we need deal.